So I was very confused. My mind was very confused. At that point, everything had changed for me. At that point, when I saw Miriam, the personality vanished, disintegrate, dissolve, dying. I mean, it hadn't even existed. When I saw that what I thought of reality doesn't exist. And then I'm back. When I saw myself as the ocean of consciousness, that is my true nature. I knew this is me, this is me. It felt so good to be there. It felt so good to be back. I was so happy when I was there. I remember when I came back, of course, as I said, I was crying. But the next time I started to meditate, and I saw the same light that I was there, something was like, yes, that's me. I want to go back. In my case, the experience itself was very quick. You reach nirvana. I mean, now I know it's called also nirvana. It took me a while. It's April now. I'm doing this in April. It took me a while to realize that's also what Buddha was referring to. And the more I read, the more I realized that other people give it other names. Yogananda gave it the name of the cosmic sea. And it's very interesting because Buddha called it the consciousness. In my master's tradition, it's called the ocean of consciousness. Buddha called it the luminous consciousness. And Yogananda called it the cosmic sea. To me, I remember I sent an email to my dad telling him about the experience, telling him, oh, you won't believe. My dad is not an initiate. He adores God. He loves God, but he's not an initiate. He does it his own way. He's actually a Jehovah's Witness. But since my dad also has these experiences of astral projection, we talk about things, He tells me his experiences and I tell him mine. So I remember I sent him an email. I said, you won't believe what happened to me. Back then, I didn't know the magnitude of it. I was not aware of the magnitude of it. To me, it just was an amazing spiritual phenomenon that had happened to me. And I told him, I was a little consciousness, and I merged into the huge consciousness. It was as if I were a little drop of the huge consciousness. And then I went, oh my God, I have heard this before. I have read this before. And it was then that I started to realize that I had merged in the ocean of consciousness. So it's like, really, I had a hard time believing it. As I started to realize what had happened, I had a hard time believing that's what had happened to me. Because as much as when you start the spiritual path, that's your aim. You think it's not going to happen. I mean, you never believe it's going to happen. At least I didn't think it would happen to me in this lifetime. But I knew I wanted it, and I knew I just had to do certain things, and I kept doing them. So I remember I spent the next 2 weeks reading the scriptures from the masters in the tradition that I got initiated in, Surat Shabda Yoga. They were all describing the same things. The ocean of consciousness, yeah. And then I realized why they call it ocean, because yes, it's huge. When I came back, I just called it the huge consciousness. And I was like a little consciousness, but I'm it, not Miriam. When I say I'm it, it's not Miriam. Miriam doesn't even exist. There's another part of this experience where you realize that the whole consciousness, you as the consciousness, you give life to everything. You give life to the creation. You give life to everything, to this blouse, to that light, to this microphone. If you as the huge consciousness, if you are not in something, it doesn't exist. If anything exists, it's because you're there. That's when I also understood that they say God is everywhere. God is everywhere. The huge consciousness, that pure consciousness is everywhere. There's nothing where it is not. And then I also understood what my master used to tell us. Not one single leaf of a tree moves without the will of God. It was so amazing. It was so amazing to start realizing that everything I had read is true. So I remember telling my dad, guess what? This was the experience I had. And I remember, I don't know if I told him what I told my brother and a friend of mine right away. Or a couple of days later, I think, while I was still digesting, because I wasn't sure. So a couple of days later, I still wasn't sure, but I told them, and I remember I describing it like, I felt as if I were wearing an astronaut suit. You know, you have a helmet, you have your thick suit around you. And so since you're within it, you only see it. You only see the astronaut suit. And I felt that when I left as pure consciousness, as if I were living an astronaut suit that was deceiving me. And I felt it was like an astronaut suit because the sky doesn't exist. The sky is not real. Nothing is real. The creation, I thought, nothing that your mind believes is real. If you see it, if you live in it, it's because God is giving it life. That's when I understood also that they say that God is the sustainer. If there's no God, there's nothing. And wherever God withdraws, it ceases to exist. Whatever was there, it ceases to exist. So that's how I first described it. It was a huge consciousness and I was a little consciousness, but I was it. And it did take me a while to start to understand it better, to start to understand the whole experience better, to start to be able to put words into it. I spent the 2 weeks after the event reading the scriptures of the gurus in my tradition, which is the Sikh gurus, the Adi Granth. Well, that's the line. I started reading some of the things that the Buddha had said about nirvana, because then I thought, okay, because in my tradition the goal is called the fifth plane, a plane of light, just light. And where I reached nirvana was not just light. I will tell you what it was like. But it was not just pure light. That's one of the highest spiritual planes. You do go through the realm of only light. But that's not the highest. That consciousness is beyond duality. Duality only exists in the creation when I saw the creation dropping, I realized that was the world of duality. Duality, it only exists in the creation. In God, in the ocean of consciousness, there's zero duality. It's just you. There's so much peace. You're so happy, you're whole, you're complete, it's just you. It's a peaceful you. You don't need anything, you're complete, you have everything. It's different. It's not something we can understand with our mind because it's not from this creation, the creation of the mind. But that's what it was like being over there. So as I was saying, there's a realm of only light. And so I thought, I remember when I came back, it's like, that's not exactly what they said it would look like. I was thinking, there's something weird here. Someone somewhere didn't quite tell the truth. So I started reading the scriptures of the gurus, which were written by the gurus, by the way, not someone wrote about what they said, but they wrote the scriptures themselves, like Buddha. So I started reading also about Buddha. And I was thinking, this is very strange because I was told that the realm of only light was my goal, but where I reached was not only light. Then I realized I had gone to the ultimate plane, to the ultimate expression of God, the pure consciousness. if anybody ever tells you, oh, I was full of love, they're still within duality. The fact that there is love implies that there is hatred, therefore it's duality. If someone tells you, oh, I was full of light, they're still within duality. Love, light, good, bad, evil, darkness, they are concepts of duality, they are concepts of the whole creation. When you leave the creation, zero duality. So, I will talk about this actually, I guess this is going to be the video after. So, after coming back, after I started to understand a little more my experience, because it was very clear that there was no duality, so there was no light. So I thought, why was I told that God was all light? It was not all light where I was, and I was with God. I was God, and I was there. It's like I experienced it, I lived it. That was me. Then I realized the ultimate plane is the ocean of consciousness. Then I read Buddha, and he said, the luminous consciousness, like, oh my God, this all makes so much sense. And then just lately I was reading Paramahansa Yogananda, and he calls it the cosmic six, like, oh, we're all on the same track. And when Jesus said, I and my Father are one, it's like, oh my God, we have all been to the same place. We've just called it a different way. So as I started to read the scriptures and what others have said about God, I started to feel like, okay, there's nothing wrong with me. Everything is okay. Yes, this was the experience I had. And it was very reassuring. It felt good. It felt good to know that others have been there, to know where I had been finally. Because my master is no longer alive. He's no longer in the physical plane. So I had no one. I have no one to check with. I did go on the internet and I did do a lot of research about people who have been there. And a lot I noticed, they have reached the plane of all light or the plane of all love. That's still duality. So I have only found one person who has described it in the exact same way as I saw it. So from his description, I can tell he has been there. Only one person. But at the same time, he's not a master, he's not a teacher, he's not into explaining or really answering questions. He leads retreats, he leads meditation retreats, but in a different way. He just tells the people, ask questions, like, we need more than just questions. Now, I was very lucky because in the path that I followed, you are told what you're going to see, what you're going to experience throughout the different planes. So when I reached the ultimate destination, I was able to later on understand what had happened. So as I said, it was really good for me to read about the other people that have been there, because my master is no longer around. I can't ask questions about what do I do now? Okay, I reached. And that was another thing that happened to me. When I realized I had reached the ultimate goal, I was thinking, okay, so what am I supposed to do now? All my life since I got initiated when I was 19, I'm 48 now. I was 47 back in January. All my life, every decision had been towards reaching the goal. Every decision. Quitting jobs, starting jobs, moving from one city to another city, from one country to another country, from one continent to another continent. It had all been with my spiritual goal in mind. So I thought, so what now? What now? And there was no master for me to tell me what to do now. Then, of course, I remembered before enlightenment, carrying water, chopping wood. After enlightenment, carrying water, chopping wood. And I thought, okay, what else can I do? Except for continue. I don't know what else to do. So I remember I was chopping food and I was thinking, oh my God, what do I do now? What happens now? The one guy I did find on the internet that seems to have been to the same place I've been, he just kept going with his life. He's married. As I say, he has retreats, but he's helping people to get there. I don't need help anymore. So I was thinking, okay, then the message I got was, it's now for you to figure out. It's your life. Now you have the life. And then I understood what, I believe it was Jesus that said, if you lose your life for me, you will gain it. Now I understood, because Miriam dissolved. Miriam died. Miriam doesn't exist. Now I'm back. Now I'm back as God, and in the same organism called Miriam, and I still have life. So I was thinking, yes, okay, I understand. I have a life. Not necessarily that I want it anymore. I have been my real self. I don't want this. It doesn't exist. It's not real. What am I doing here for? What am I here for? What am I doing here? So that was the part right after the event that got confusing, very confusing. But again, it's confusing in a light way. You're not stressed. Oh, speaking about stress. But anyway, let me finish this. You're not stressed out. You're not in anguish. You're just light confused, like, ooh, what am I supposed to do now? And speaking about stress, I remember when I came back, I'm still in this organism in Miriam, what's called the personality, with all its habits, okay? So I remember, because I was in intensive meditation, I didn't have a job. I hadn't started to look for a job because I wanted to do intensive meditation. I remember after the event happened, I was thinking, okay, now I really need to get a job. And then I started to be stressed out about not having a job. But then I realized something does change within you. Even if outside everything seems to be the same, something changes within you. Because when I felt deep stress, I felt as if knives were stabbing me. I went, ooh, like I can't get stressed anymore. I can't get deep negative emotions. I can't feel them. I'm not allowed to. I should not. Because one of the main realizations, one of the main things you realize when you become the ocean of consciousness is it is everywhere. It is, nothing happens without it. It's mathematical intelligence. It's beyond mathematics, because time doesn't exist. So for you as it, there's no future, there's no present, there's no past. Whatever happens to influence everything. So when you become aware of that, there's no reason to be worried about anything, because everything is truly the will of God. So I realized that by me worrying, I was attempting against myself. It's as if I didn't believe in myself, and that hurt me. I was hurting myself by not believing in myself, God. So I realized I should not, if it's my choice, do I want to feel this deep, intensive, negative emotions? And then I'm going to feel I'm hurting myself. So ever since, I think it happened one more time again, related to finding a job, that I felt the knives is like, okay, you should not do this anymore. You cannot do this anymore. I can do it, but then it's going to hurt myself. So I no longer feel the negative emotions deep. I just remind myself, you do need to do something in the physical plane. You do, to help yourself. You do. But you are in control. Literally, you as God, you're in control. And when I say you, again, I'm not Miriam. Not Miriam. The personality is not in control. The mind is not in control. Me, God. Me, the ocean of consciousness in this organism. So that was one of the changes after the event in me. I shouldn't feel negative. I'm going to say I'm not allowed to feel deep negative emotions. If I do, I just feel like knives stabbing me. The deep positive emotions, I I've noticed I feel them even not deep, but lighter, like they're more intense. They go out more. So it's really nice. My physical life hasn't changed. I did find a job afterwards, which I just left because it was not the right match. It was not the right match for me. I'm again looking for a job. Luckily, where I live now, there's tons of jobs. And thanks to my very small mortgage, even a minimum wage will cover all the expenses for me. As soon as I finish creating this course, actually, I'm going to start my job search.